Hey everybody, this is Jared, and today we're going to be talking about money. It should be fun. And as I kind of kick this thing off, I'm gonna give just a couple seconds and thank you all for tuning in. Those of you who are watching live, and those of you who have been following me post live. I mean, this is great fun. It was great fun last week, and I'm sure we're gonna have a good time and a good discussion today, as well as just as well as we did last week. But today, our topic of discussion is just money. I mean, we could talk about greed. We can talk about a lot of aspects that go into this. We know that money is an important topic, not just in our average, ordinary, everyday lives, but also as far as a biblical topic, right? Because Jesus and the disciples, the writers of the Bible, talked about money a lot. It was obviously very important to them, as it is to us, as it is to as it will be to people in the future. So we're talking all about currency, money. We're going to be talking about some current events related to these things, and then just going from there, see how things work. I see a couple of you've already jumped on, and I appreciate you tuning in. So as we just to kind of intro this thing, the topic at hand is money, is greed, is other aspects about what we think on these topics, and more closely, like, what would you do if you had all the money in the world? Would it buy you happiness? Like, some people think that all of their problems would be solved if they had X amount, right? Like, it would be over. But I think there's some things to unpack here, and we'll spend some time in that. But for now, let me talk a little bit about a current event that's happening. I don't know how involved you are personally in this, but I just read something about the Mega Millions jackpot, which just yesterday, right, as of Friday, is it October yet? Oops, October the 19th. The Mega Millions jackpot jumped to $1 billion. And so no one's won long enough to where it's stacked to $1 billion. Like, that's how much you could win if you play the lottery and actually get all the numbers right. I don't even know how lottery works. Like, hey, good morning, Dr. Dan. Appreciate you tuning in from Iowa. It's good to see you. Hello from Texas. So the thing is, it's one of those things that there is. So, hey, good morning. Good morning. It's good to see you. And there is just so much to unpack here. Like, I have to think to myself, what would I do with $1 billion? It's just a crazy amount to think about, I think. But it is one of those things. I read some statistics on it, and they say that the lottery officials adjusted the rules and the odds in 2017 to make the jackpot pay out less often. Get this, the smaller the pot is. So it's in order to boost the growth rapidly. So what happens is, the smaller the amount is, they altered the rules and the regulations and the odds to where it is less, there's less chance of you winning when it's just 100 million. Like, that's that small of an amount, right? But now that it's 1 billion, like, your odds are greater, but it's greater for everybody. Like, so you might have to split it with several people, but you've got a greater chance. But those chances are still 1 in 302.6 million. So the odds are not great. They're not in your favor. And the reason that this came up for me today, and I've been thinking about this over the weekend, is I had a couple friends who decided, hey, it's only $2, it's only $3 to play these two different, lottery things. I'll give it a shot. And when that happens, it's so funny. The conversation always turns to the next step. So, what are you gonna do if you win the money? Right? That's always the next thing that happens. And so you talk about different things. If you are a recent graduate of college, like the answer is always, you guessed it, right? I'm going to pay off my student loans. And the joke is, and then with the money left over, I'll go see a movie, right? That's the joke always. But, and maybe for somebody, there's some truth there. I don't know. But it's just interesting to play that what if game. I think that's something that is really interesting to me, and it really shows a lot about your character. What is your first reaction to getting a crazy, ungodly amount of money? Like, it's crazy, $1 billion. What would you do? And I want you to think about that for a second, like how that would change your life. If you were to just windfall, it came in overnight. And there are a lot of things, of course, you know, there are people out there who go, yeah, I've got to think about the taxes on that. Like that's the, that's the first thing you think about. But how many of us, and I'm asking you to be real here, how many of us realistically think within the first 5 things about giving the money away, right? How many of us think, I would love to give a portion of it to a friend, to a family member, to a church, or to a cause? I would like to donate that money. And I think for a lot of us, that becomes, that actually is more normal than usual. I honestly think, you know, how many of you are with me on this? Like, one of the first top 5 things that you would do is give the money away. I mean, I'm just asking. I don't know. I'd love to see your comments on that. But there are things that we would do right away. But I think most of us, I know for me, I would love to be able to give back to my family. Like, I would love to be able to share a little bit. Yes, absolutely. Just to share with my family, with my friends. There's a lot of people that I would love to give back to, my church. I would love to give, but the reality is, we are always in this perpetual loop of, yep, they just started the music program, and so maybe you would donate to that. I mean, that would be great. But how many of us always say, and I know I count myself among these numbers, how many of us always say, well, I'll give when I have the money? Do you know what I mean by that? Like, it's one of those things, but how many of us say we would love to do that, but only when we got the money? And I understand the mentality behind that, except for, what if the money never comes? And I think that's something I've been challenged with. I recently watched a video on YouTube about a pastor who, and I think I mentioned it to one of the viewers. Yep, I mean, we all want to help the people who are struggling financially. You know, nephews, nieces, aunts, grandparents, even, like for those of us who are young enough to have the privilege of having those around still. But I guess where I'm really at is, you know, if the money never comes, will I never have the opportunity to give? Like, is that the reality here? Am I just never going, if it never comes, if I never am financially wealthy, like beyond my normal, is the day ever going to come? And so I think that's where I've really been thinking hard about this. I watched a video, I think I started to say this, but I didn't finish my thought, that there was a pastor somewhere, and he was giving a sermon on giving. And so we hear these all the time, especially around like the big financial push when budgets are coming out for churches. Like, we hear these speeches a lot. But it was interesting to hear this pastor's take on it. He said that if you are not giving 10% to your church, even if at any point in your life, then you are essentially, I mean, he outright said this. He said, you are stealing from God. Like, that's the reality. And I was really challenged by that. I don't know if I believe it. I don't know if I really believe that, because I think God doesn't need our money. But I think my thought process has changed a little bit in this, and I'd love to share it with you. From God doesn't need our money, but here's the flip side, we need to give. I wonder if any of you have had that thought before. I don't think it's an original thought, but it's something that is original to me, and I'm just now starting to think through and think, what's the extent of this? And so in my thought processes of like, what happens if I were to come into $1 billion? What would I do to it? And I think, if I'm being real, it's what I'm doing on a regular basis, just on a larger scale. I think the exact same things that I'm currently doing, I would continue to do, just at a more accelerated rate. So if I'm giving to the church, I think I would give more. If I'm helping family members out financially, I would do that more. I think if I'm spending it on stuff, cars, candy, goods, food, whatever, I think I would do more of that. I would go to the extreme of that. And that's just personal reflection. I don't think everyone's like that. I think some people might change their habits if they came into a large sum, but I just really had to get real with myself and think about, okay, this is what I'm just being real here. I think exactly what I'm doing right now, I would just do more of. So here's my question to you. What do you think you would do with the money? Like, put yourself in that headspace right now and think realistically and go, if I came into and I just won the jackpot tomorrow, what would I do with that money? And I mean, I'll share it with you, like what I would do. I would pay off my debts, which include student loans, and I don't have a whole lot of other debts outside of that. I think my wife and I would want to purchase a house. We live in an apartment right now, so that's a thing. Like, we would want to own our own home, and we would like to give back to friends, family, and the community. And beyond that, I mean, what do I do? Do you know what I mean? It's like, how, yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of us are the same way, and we have the same mentality here. Like, what else? And I think most of us would default into, well, now that I have it, I can go buy the thing that I've been waiting for. And that thing just happens to be a better car, a better house, more, something like that. Okay, so I've got a question. If someone did win the big jackpot, how would it affect the tithes? Would they give 10% to their local church? I think that's an interesting point there. And let's see if I can bring that. I don't know how to bring the chat back up, but yeah, would they realistically, on that windfall, would they truly give the 10? And I don't know if that's the case or not. I would be interested to find that out, because I don't know. I can't speak for you, but I can speak for me, and I just know the way that I am. And so I hope that when we're thinking about these things, if you do these things, if you tempt, you try and play the lottery, you try and branch out on a new business adventure, or you try and land that perfect job for you, that we think hard about where our habits are now and not where they are in the future. And I think that's so important. And I'm just challenging myself here more than anyone else. This really isn't for anybody. This is really just, I'm putting this on the record, and I'm challenging myself that I want to live as if I had just got the $1 billion. That's how I want to live, except in the micro. I want to live like that with the money that I have now, because tomorrow is never going to come. And not to say that, like, I'll never have more money. Like, I absolutely think I'm going to win. It's just, I don't think that if I don't start the habits now, then they'll never be there. I mean, yeah. Or would that be considered? Yeah, I see what you're saying. I didn't read the last part, the dirty money part, but yeah, would the church even know what to do with that? I don't know. It's just one of those what if, scenarios. But I just want to get you thinking about how can we on a micro do what we would do in the macro? How do we make steps toward helping those people that we would want to help in small ways that we can afford, that we can manage with the current finances that we've been blessed with? And I think that's what I'm going away, and I really came away with after talking with these friends that played the lottery, is how do I do those things that I had said that I would love to do, but go ahead and start doing them? I don't know. I think that's my challenge to myself, and that's my challenge to you. And so I appreciate you joining me on this Saturday. Any closing remarks or any questions or anything like that? I've always wondered what athletes that make millions of dollars, I would love to know what they do with all that money. The crazy thing is when they stop working, usually those athletes, what happens is they don't continue, right? They don't continue to be successful. When they stop working, that's it. Unless they have a next step, unless they're going towards something, they're one injury away from being done. And I think a lot of us live that way also. We're so wrapped up in the job that we have that we don't want to get fired from, and we are living paycheck to paycheck. And how do we start living into a different reality? How do we change our mindset between, well, I'll do something different when I have the athletic money, like when I make it big and I go pro, and how do I be responsible with what I've got now? I've wondered that myself several times, especially about pro athletes and people like that. So I'm with you 100%. But anyway, it's just something that's been on my mind, and I know it's important to some other people, and I would love to hear your thoughts about this, especially if you're watching live, we've kind of discussed it a little bit, but I'd love to, if you're on the playback, are you outside your church? Oh, just no, I'm I am outside. My wife didn't want me filming inside. Isn't that goofy? So I'm just sitting on a park bench out here. Just went someplace where it would be relatively quiet, but it is outside. Anyway, it's where I was able to get away this Saturday for the live stream, and I appreciate you joining me. Anyway, I'm wrapping up here, but I would really appreciate if you have any other questions or conversations that we didn't have so far about money, about finances, about the nature of greed. Is it really the root of all evil? I don't know. I think that the love of money is, as the Bible says, but I've kind of been challenged about a lot of these topics and things that we're kind of mulling over, not just in our personal lives, but in the church as well. And so, anyway, I really do appreciate those of you who joined me live. Don't forget, after the broadcast is over, to hit that like button. And of course, if you're watching this on the playback, I appreciate your comments and love to be you to join the conversation that's happening. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you joining me today. And as always, go in peace.